Hello, my name is Joe Canine, the Video Whisperer, and this is going to be a review of the Sony PXW X70. This guy. What you can expect to see in this review is about 7 or 8 minutes of footage, test footage, actual production footage, interior footage, nighttime lighting, daytime lighting, corporate interview lighting, and exterior footage. A little bit of sunshine I had one day, but the rest of the time cloudy and once in the rain. Alright, you get to see all that. In fact, the first thing I'm going to show you, however, is a direct comparison between the NX30 and the X70 on a long walking shot, since a lot of people ask me about that. No, their stabilization systems are not the same. The NX30 has a gyro-stabilized lens, and the X70 does it all through image processing. But it does have an active mode and a standard mode. So active mode crops your picture, I think, about 1.5%, and I guess uses all that 1-inch sensor and its 4K capability electronics to do a really good job of essentially the same thing the NX30 does. In fact, I was hard-pressed to find the difference between the two, and I'll show you that in a second. But the first thing I wanted to cover was a few things I often get asked. Number one, no, I don't work for Sony, and no, Sony doesn't pay me. In fact, Sony Marketing UK screwed the pooch on this one, said they'd loan me one to do a review on, and then completely dropped out of communication and didn't respond to emails. So I went out and bought it myself. I guess they were too busy marketing or something. And the second thing is, this is not primarily my job. I don't really do camera reviews, so you might wonder why I do these, because I've done 3 now, but primarily 2. The one I'm doing now and the NX30. My interest and the purpose of my blog, this is after all a blog posting. The Video Whisperer blog was oriented for soul shooters like me, guys who go out, they don't have a support crew, they don't have an organization behind them, and so the ability to travel light and move in and out fast and have a camera that's going to be a good wingman is my interest. And in this particular case, my sense was this was the upgrade of the NX30, even though you won't find any such mention in literature. But it's similarly sized. It does have active mode stabilization. It does have intelligent auto, like I suppose a lot of Sony cameras do. And it's got a 1-inch sensor, and it's 4K ready. Okay? So the 1-inch sensor, to me, told me that I'd get greater depth of field in doing a corporate interview shot, and that was the main reason, the primary reason I bought the camera, to have that facility. But it's also small and light, so it fits the run and gun category. In fact, in my camera case, I've got 4 cameras, the NX30, the X70, a DSLR, and a GoPro. And it all fits in the overhead compartment on an airplane, so that's traveling light. Okay, so I said the first thing I was going to show you was a comparison. Well, let's get to it. Alright, did this a couple of days ago on an actual production shoot. Mounted the cameras on a homemade mount side by side and matched up the frames best I could. Oddly enough, the client never even asked me why I was shooting with 2 cameras like that. Well, I was doing it for you guys. Anyway, I have no idea what's going to happen when we do these walkthroughs. I do it often on corporate shoots. You know, we get taken on a tour, or in this case it was a school, sometimes it's an industrial plant, and I'll mic the guy up and follow them around for 15 or 20 minutes, walking behind, walking in front, and we'll very often then be able to use snippets of this to cover up edits in the sit-down interview, which is usually done later. It's, you know, seat of the pants. That's an example of something you couldn't use, which reminds me there were comments on the NX30 review footage, various anomalies people would find in the footage. And guys, there is something called the editing room floor. The reason I'm showing you these long sustained shots is so you can study the camera and see what it does. Here's the transition from inside to outside, for example. Shot went dead after that. Here the NX30 rendered the sky better, but to be fair, I hadn't dropped in the ND filter on the X70, which is one of its advantages, so That's a little bit of a mistake. By the way, none of this footage is processed in post in any way, color, stabilization, or anything else. Now, walking backwards. This is a handy thing to be able to do, and to be honest, I don't think you can do this with very many cameras. In fact, sometimes it's harder to walk slowly like they're walking here. In a second we turn around, there we go, the pace is picked up a little bit. Alright, there you go, there's a side-by-side comparison. Later on I'll show you some other walking shots I did inside Beaver Castle. Well, that settles that, I guess. Alright, now I mentioned ND filters in there. The X70 has a switch in the back that allows you to drop in any one of 3 different ND filters, and the viewfinder will flash the ND filter that it wants you to put in. So if you forget, it reminds you. Likewise, if you have an ND filter in and you go inside, it'll flash and tell you to take it out. As near as I can figure, the camera is trying to set its aperture to about f/5.6, which is presumably the sweet spot for the lens, and that's what it does. Like now the NX30, for example, doesn't have ND filter capability, and so if you're shooting outside on a bright day, and this has happened to me fairly often, and particularly at the the long end of your lens, zoomed in, with a small f-stop, say f/22, very small aperture, you'll get diffraction of the short wavelengths, white and blue, and so your whites will be they'll bleed a little bit, and the overall image sharpness will be degraded. So that can't happen on this camera, which is another great advantage. Other thing I wanted to mention before we move on is this camera will shoot in, and I hope I named this right, XAVC HD and AVC HD. XAVC HD requires a very fast card, and the smallest ones are 64 gigabyte, but they're not that expensive. I think I paid 30, 40 pounds or something like that for a couple of the cards. But I'm not shooting in XAVC HD because Sony has made it slightly difficult for some NLE systems, mine included, Final Cut Pro 10, I believe some others, to transcode XAVC HD to whatever the editing program likes to work with. And it's been promised for 2 years now. So they have provided a rather prehistoric program that allows you to transcode, in my case, to Final Cut 10 ProRes, shot by shot. It won't even batch process, so one by one by one by one you can transcode them, and I don't really bother with it right now, but by the end of this video review I will go through the trouble, and you and me both are going to find out at the same time what the difference is. Okay, so that's that. What's next? Alright, I think next I'm going to show you the buttons. I'm going to show you the camera and its menu a little bit, walk you through that, and when we're done with that we'll go back to a whole bunch of video footage, and that's all I can think of right now. Okay, so there she is, the smoking hot X70. By the way, this camera will shoot at 50 megabits per second, which does qualify it for most broadcast TV. It comes with a Zeiss lens, 2.8 lens. Mind you, that 2.8 is at the wide end, and as you zoom in it'll go up to about 5, 6 or something like that. And there on the lens you'll see a little AF/MF button. By pushing that you can go into autofocus or manual focus, and then by the rocker switch above you can either manipulate the focus or the zoom by turning the knurled ring on the lens. You'll see a menu button that activates the menu, of course, but to the right of that are 3 buttons, and there's 5 or 6 buttons altogether that are all assignable. You can change the assignments of these, but in this case the iris, if you're in manual mode, you press that and turn that knurled knob to the left, and you can put the iris anywhere you want to. Same with the gain. Same with the shutter speed. And then on top is the standard audio module that you can take off the camera if you want to. That little fuzzy thing on top is a homemade shoe for holding one of my radio mics. And there's your inputs for your XLR inputs for your microphones. This is embarrassing, a little dusty. Anyway, there's your start-stop to start recording or not. There's another button on top for the same. And that little button to the right of it is the rocker for your menu. So you can scroll up, down, sideways with that thing, and it works very well. By the way, I was happy to find that the batteries for this camera are the same batteries as the NX30 takes. And there in the middle bottom of the frame is the ND filter selector, and above that is the switch that allows you to go into full manual or full auto. And up there you press that, and there's two different settings for zooming in on your frame for sharp focusing purposes. To access the menu, push the button in front of the camera and then use that little rocker knob in the back to be able to scroll through. You can limit your automatic gain control. You can use white balance presets, indoor, outdoor. Here you can set any color temperature you want. And that's for pushing a button to white balance to a white card. That's where you turn your digital extender on and off. And here's where you can do various settings for either the rocker on the camera body or the one in the handle, set speeds and so on. You can see you've got standard and active mode stabilization. You can shoot in slow motion. That's where you can set intelligent auto or scene selection, and don't forget you can turn the switch in the back of the camera and just go manual. These are interesting. These next three settings allow you to touch the screen and either meter and focus what you've touched, or in this setting you can just set it to meter the part of the scene that you touch, or in this one simply to focus on what you touch. This is where you change all your settings to AVC HD or XAVC HD, and those are all the things that you can select to shoot the shooting modes. You can set your cards to record simultaneously on both cards, or relay recording, which is when one card's done it switches to the other one automatically. You can do various things with the record button, as you can see. Various audio settings, various display settings, your zebra markers. You can turn your running light on and off, time code settings, network settings, and various other things. But here is where you can go to that assign button. And as you can see, you've got 6 different buttons, and I'm going to click on one here, and I can set that button to whatever I want it to show me when I press it. Well, I didn't show you everything, but you get the idea. Basically, I think all of the positioning of the knobs and the controls and the access to menus and all that on this camera were well thought out and sensibly placed and easy to use. Alright, so now I'm going to show you a bunch of footage, okay? Let's get on with that. This shows you pretty much the full range of the camera, and I'm sorry, this is before I figured out how to slow down the zoom speed. Got excited, it was a sunny day and all. Anyway, this is Beaver Castle. This is pretty much my backyard. We call these the neighbors up on the hill. And what you're about to see here is, I promised this on the blog, this is Anya, who I did some modeling shots for. Frankly, I think these are crap shots in terms of my shoot. Well, let's put it this way. These are actually the first test shots I did with the camera. Unfortunately, it was a lousy day. It was pretty dark outside, despite the fact that the windows look overexposed. On a sunny day, light pours into this hole, and it looks gorgeous. And here, I believe the camera was even shooting 9 dB or something like that. So, coming up are some shots I did to actually pull still frames from for the book that I'm writing, Run and Gun Videography. It was only a few seconds each. Unfortunately, I wasn't thinking about using it for this video. So these are just sample shots of using two lights, run and gun style, to shoot on location using what you've got. This is a nighttime lighting there, and the next one I think also nighttime lighting, but I added a frontal fill so I'd get some eye lights in there. Anyway, you now start to get the idea of the depth of field advantage. This is that you recognize this girl from those first shots I showed you. This was the interview for that production shoot. And again, the reason I'm showing you these is now you can see the depth of field that you can get with this camera. Lousy light. It was not really lousy lighting here. She was just very sweaty, and I was a little reluctant to do anything about it. I wasn't quite sure. And here I'm just kind of making do. This is Vox Pox style interviews on the spot, no lighting, just using what's there. But look at the depth of field, though. You know, I think that's basically, for me, that is the highlight of the camera, along with the fact that it's at least as good as the NX30 on its stabilization. And I do think it has a better picture quality. Alright, told you we'd have some rainy stuff. This is an actual shoot, a Beaver Castle shoot. I'm holding the camera in my left hand and driving with my right. If you put this camera on a proper mount, I think it would do well for a car shot. Alright, as you can see, it's pouring rain. I'm holding the camera in one hand. This is telephoto. And an umbrella in the other hand. And believe it or not, a bird fell out of the sky and landed on my umbrella. I kid you not. Okay, the rain stopped. Again, we get a sense of the depth of field that this camera's got. This is all handheld telephoto, like almost extreme telephoto, I think, in most of these cases. In this shot, you're going to see a bird hit the ground. That's how they do it. There she goes, pheasant. And the young lady gets a shot. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I thought, let's just try to follow that dog. You tell me if the camera stayed in focus. I have no idea if it knew what it was trying to focus on, but it seemed to do okay here. There's the Grantham Canal. You're about to see a shot I did experimentally running laterally alongside a dog sideways. And coming up after this is something that really impressed me. It's a handheld shot, full telephoto on digital extender. And look how sharp that is. And finally, a little bonfire we had in the backyard just for a bit of fun. It was really big. And that's all I've got. Alright, you might notice you're looking at me through the X70 right now. And I must say, right now it's shooting, now I haven't changed the lighting and I'm not going to. It's shooting at plus 9 dB f3.4, which tells me, regardless of what the spec sheets say, the NX30 is better at low light levels. Now I say it's shooting at f3.4, it's a 2.8 lens, but at this focal length and slightly tighter, which is what you'd be using for an interview typically, I noticed the other day that it was shooting at around f3.4, f3.5. So that seems to be the widest aperture you're going to get. So obviously a DSLR with a fast lens, you can get really shallow depth of field, and this is probably not the best example. Those earlier shots you saw are probably better examples of what you'll get in reality in application. But to me, that's better than the NX30 for an interview shot. For walking shots, I use them both the same, so basically it's kind of handy to have both of them in my kit. There's one last thing we need to do, and that is I need to now set this thing up to shoot in XAVC HD and compare that to what you're looking at right now. By the way, I hope this is in focus. I did it manually. Kind of hard to do that, and the camera's way over there. Okay, so last test coming right up. Guess what I just wasted my time doing? I shot this beautiful, I mean it was gorgeous, flawless, perfect, emotional wrap up in XAVC HD, and then I tried to import it, transcode it to ProRes, to import it into Final Cut Pro 10 using Sony's Catalyst program I told you about earlier. Well, that didn't go well, and now the file is corrupted, so screw that. Alright, 3 or 4 last quick things to mention. This is the card I use. This is an SDXC card, and you need that to be able to shoot in XAVC HD. It's 60 megabits per second SanDisk 64 gigabyte Extreme. They go up to 90 megabits per second and higher for shooting those large files. The other thing is I wanted to point out this camera is quote-unquote 4K ready. Well, if you want a 4K camera, buy one that's already ready. Don't buy this one. It'll be nice one day if Sony actually does come up with a firmware update that makes this a 4K camera. It's going to cost you when that happens, but right now I can't be bothered with that, and you have to realize if you want to shoot in 4K, well, you need to invest thousands of dollars, thousands of pounds into hardware, computers, and monitors and all that will deal with it. So I'm really talking about this camera on its merits as an HD camera right now. And let's see, what else do we have here? Excuse me. If you haven't seen it already, there's a promo video Sony did for this camera called 3 Glass Artisans. Look it up. My footage might be a little on the shabby side, a bit run and gun really, but if you want to really see what this camera can do on the high end with, you know, the care and attention and lighting and everything that goes into it, look at that video, particularly the later close-up shots they do of this fancy glass work. It really is spectacular. It really is a good camera. Okay, and finally, I think I mentioned it earlier, and if I didn't, I've written a book called Run and Gun Videography. I hoped that it would be ready to release with this video. Well, it's still going to be 2 or 3 weeks before I get to wrapping it up. It's written, I just have to do all the photographs and all that kind of stuff. But just as a note, when it is available, I'll put a link on this video. And meanwhile, if you subscribe to the blog, I'll keep you updated, and there you can read 4, 5, or 6 previewed chapters that are already on the blog. All right, that's it. Good night.